also, if I was going to get out to the airport where my dad was, it was thanks to her as well. And we as a family spent a lot of time out at the local airport. My dad loved to build and fly small, like biplanes to as a hobby. And so that was what got me off the planet for the first time. I loved it. I knew I wanted to know how to fly myself, but I think even more importantly, I knew I wanted to know how things fly. And that led me down this, man, if you want to know how airplanes fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly? Space shuttle program starting up, got to work at NASA. And long story short, as I am a rambler, that whole just love, which is what I would encourage people to keep doing. People that are excited about wanting to become an astronaut or whatever it is you're wanting to do, let that curiosity really kind of fire you up, because it's amazing the kind of people you'll meet that will lift you up along the way, the opportunities that'll come along if you pay attention to that, and how happy you'll be doing that work when you let that happen. And I can tell you, I am very thankful to have found that love of flying and wanting to know how things fly, and getting to fly in space and come back to Earth and share it as well.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think that's what makes me excited for commercial space is we see rockets launching every day, and it's so much more accessible for younger students to just turn on the TV, see a SpaceX launch or a Blue Origin launch, and just be inspired with all that's happening with space exploration. So it's great to hear your journey. And our next question is for Chris and George. As commercial astronauts, I'm curious to learn about what did going to space mean to you, and how did that experience change your perspective on the industry or about our planet in general, and how did that experience change your life?
Well, I guess I'll chime in here, and then George, feel free to jump in at any time. But going to space was never really something I had dreamed that I could do, but it was something that was an extraordinary gift that was given to me, not just by Jared, who funded the flight, but also generosity that was paid to me from my friend Kyle, who actually won the flight and then decided that he couldn't make the flight and gave it to me. So that whole experience really made me realize that going to space can be a huge act of generosity. And so that, being able to share that forward and pay that forward and talk to folks like you and encourage you to kind of pursue some passions is what's really important now. But what did I take away from being in space? I think that's huge. I mean, besides the whole part about wanting to pay it forward, just being able to go through that journey of experiencing how important space is to people and how exciting and inspiring it can be, and encouraging people to pursue those things that they're passionate about and what they're really, what they excel in, so that they can propel us into the future with whatever it is that their hearts drive them towards. It's a really exciting thing to see. And seeing the Earth from that perspective, I think for me, it was just an incredibly special gift to receive. So, George, what did it feel like for you? What did it mean for you when you were on board New Shepard?
So great comments, Chris. Thanks. My story was a little bit different. I first became interested in airplanes and space as a child and was watching all the space flights and so forth. Later on, after graduation from college, I had the opportunity to directly become involved in our space programs as an Air Force officer and engineer, and then as a manager for NASA at the Johnson Space Center, working on the shuttle program. I was in industry for a few years, working on space taxis and reusable launch vehicles, and then spent a number of years leading the FAA's Office of Commercial Space Transportation that dealt with all the commercial companies doing these launches. So I was a part of and supporting our space programs for most of my career. And then just over a year ago, had the chance to actually participate in that myself and see what that was like. And it was an awesome experience. The whole thing was just incredible. Certainly the ascent, memorable, weightlessness, fun, liberating, but at least for me, the high point of the flight itself, by far, was the view. And looking out the huge windows and seeing the curvature of the Earth, and then that thin blue line that is the atmosphere that you're above, and then looking above that, and you see the sky, and it's not blue, it is the blackest black that you can imagine. And that whole image was just so beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Videos and pictures just do not do it justice. So it just became an incredible experience to have been through that. And now what I would like to do is see what we need to do to help more and more people have that experience. There's only 650 people in the whole world who've ever had the chance to go to space. So we're going to need more rockets, more spacecraft, more satellites, more spaceports, and figure out how to get the cost down and continue to improve safety so that more and more people can have that amazing experience.
Amazing answers from both of you, Chris and George. This next question is for you, Ron. As a future commercial astronaut, how are you preparing for this life-changing experience, and what are your thoughts on the overview effect?
Well, thanks, Felix, and thanks for having me. Great to be with you all. I've been preparing in a number of ways. I've signed up with Galactic in 2010 and with Blue Origin more recently. So yes, fitness is one. If you're 10 pounds lighter, the spaceship will go higher. So that's always a nice thing to focus on. I've done a couple of zero-G flights and centrifuge training at NASTAR, and I think those are really helpful so you know how your body is going to react to those conditions, and you could be ready for everything else that is included. I think what I focused on most is what I'm going to do up there, and I thought at first I just want to look at the Earth. And then I read a quote from Stephen Hawking that says, "Oh, wait, you're going to be out in the universe. You should be thinking about what that means to you." And then I read a quote from Dave Scott, who walked on the moon in Apollo 15, and he was at an art exhibit of images from the mission. And someone asked him, "Gee, Dave, there's some people say the moon looked kind of brown. Some people said it looked kind of gray. What do you think?" And Dave Scott said, "You see what you expect to see. You have to open your mind." And that, I think, is where I've come to now, is trying to be the most open to how that experience presents itself to me. It's a very quick transition from being under the thrill of a rocket firing you at Mach 3 to having that rocket shut off, and all of a sudden you're weightlessness and it's quiet and you could see the Earth. So I've thought a lot about how best to make that transition. And regarding the overview effect, I've spent a little time with Frank White, the author of the Overview Effect book, and it's not anything I think you can bring on yourself. And I think being most open gives you the opportunity to experience whatever that is. I've talked to him a little bit about he's talked with a few of the people that have flown on Blue, and they've come away with very different experiences. Chris Bosshausen felt like he was drawn into the universe when he started looking out the window. William Shatner, you've probably seen, felt it was more like, oh my gosh, such a contrast of there's life down there and death up here, and he felt grief for the Earth and the status of the Earth. So I think it's best to really not try and focus on any one thing.
That's a great response. Ron, I was actually there when, during the conference when Frank White was speaking about the overview effect, and just hearing the astronaut experience. I'm very excited to see you go to space and have that opportunity to experience something very beautiful. And just hearing, Chris and George talking about their experiences, viewing Earth from a different perspective, it's just incredible and mind-blowing. But space travel, like George was mentioning, is still a very inaccessible experience. So, my next question is for Nicole and George. I admire all the work that the both of you do on this panel to bring the excitement around space travel to everyone here down on Earth, from students to adults, and really just everyone. And so I'm curious, could you share a little bit more about some of the work you're doing down here to inspire diverse students across the world to pursue interdisciplinary aerospace careers, and the importance of continuing to make space accessible for everyone?
Want me to go, George? Well, I want to thank my three fellow panelists for sharing as they have, because I think it's really important for us to hear all of these different perspectives as well, and to kind of glean the commonness that comes from, but also like each one of you had this little kind of twist on it. And Ron, I so look forward to you, like Gitika just said, I so look forward to you flying in space, because I think a big part of the answer you just gave about preparing to go is that understanding of what is unknown about it, right? This opportunity to open ourselves, like our hearts, our minds, to what we might not be expecting to, and to be, hopefully positively overwhelmed by that in some way, and wanting to bring it back to earth. And I think that's the big thing for me, and all of what I've had the opportunity to do to share the experience coming back to earth is, I mean, it has to do with that, is like encouraging people. Like, I'm looking out my back window right now. I'm really fortunate to live on this canal that's off the intercoastal. There's beautiful flowers. My dog's laying there in the grass. There's occasionally a dolphin that comes swimming down the canal. And I'm like, that is awesome and wonderful. It is a lot of times I feel like it's the same kind of feeling I had looking out the window of a spaceship back at Earth. And it's because I think I've opened my heart and my mind to experience those things now, right? To be appreciative of them, to realize I don't, as much as I recommend it to everyone, and I want this accessibility to open up, I want people also to know you don't have to go to space to appreciate this awe and wonder, this place that we live in, this universe that's so specially created for us in whatever way you believe it was created, right? A little closer, a little further from the sun, not so good for us. What George mentioned about this veil thin blue line of atmosphere that seems to go on forever, and yet it is veil thin. And Chris, some of the pictures you took from your mission are the most incredible I've ever seen of Earth from space, and the way it glows against that blackness that George mentioned. I don't think we have to go to space to appreciate that, but I want it to be accessible. So in rambling that way, as I always do, this kind of thing that you and Felix have facilitated here, it's huge. I think you can tell that we all want to be talking about it, right? So we want to share it in as many ways as possible. We take pictures, we write books, we go to these other experiences. Ron, like you mentioned, I still want to fly on zero-G flights. I still want to go get in the centrifuge. That doesn't stop because you had the chance to go, fly on a spaceship somewhere. Those are the kind, they just really, they're so unusual that they allow you to, I think, experience things differently. And so, I don't know, just being present to me is huge. I've got this colorful spacesuit behind me. It's part of a project called Space for Art Foundation, where we work with kids all over the world, space themed art therapy stuff, just trying to, encourage kids to understand their role as crewmates, to lift them up, in ways. Most of them are in hospitals and refugee centers and orphanages. You want them thinking about their future. And it's amazing how the inspiration of space, every time I see your patch there, Chris, it makes me smile. And this creativity coming together can get kids thinking beyond, like really thinking about their future and the place they can have in it, and this connection between personal and planetary health, and hopefully get them thinking about their place on a planet that's in space, and if they want, how to get off it and experience Earth from that vantage point as well. But there's so much going on, and I will just come back to saying in closing, this kind of thing, looking at all of your faces and hearing these different stories, I think it's such a huge way that we can be encouraging more positive things to be happening in the world of commercial space flight, as well as, I'm still for the NASA astronauts too, going to give my hands up to them as well. But the accessibility of it all, I cannot wait to see what this is going to look like when Felix, when you and Gitika are my age. I think I'm the oldest here. When what the world and space around us will look like as a result of that. I just can't wait to see it.
So great.
Sorry, George.
Fantastic. I love those comments. just talking about all the exciting things that are going on right now, especially in the commercial space arena, is just so motivating, and things seem to be happening so quickly. It's almost an acceleration of accomplishments and opportunities going forward. There's so many different projects. It's not just one company or one kind of rocket or one program. It's a wide array of things, and that is really inspiring. There's one area that I think those of us in aerospace could probably do a little bit better, and that is communicating the fact that space is not just for rocket scientists and engineers and test pilots. If you look at some of the visions that leadership is coming up with these days, for example, Jeff Bezos, who founded Blue Origin, has this vision of millions of people living and working in space to benefit Earth. And of course, that'll take a long time for that to happen. But as we step along the path to have people living and working in space, it's going to take all kinds of different people. And yes, engineers and scientists and other experts for sure. And so if people are good at that, keep studying. You have a way to contribute there. But we're also going to need mechanics and electricians and welders and farmers, and also, to make life more pleasant and enjoyable, poets and artists and musicians and all those kinds of people. So for those who have a passion for space, even though you may not be good at math or something else, stick with it, because there's going to be a place for you. So, wow, what an exciting time to be alive today, and some amazing things are going to be happening in the years ahead.
Amazing, some wonderful answers from both of you, and thank you, Nicole, for those kind words about the panel. That's the reason that we do this, is inspiring the next generation, kind of teaching people about kind of the opportunities and inspiring people about stories. Our next question here is for Nicole. Art has been a big part of your space flights and your work on the International Space Station. And your art has inspired a lot of people, including young people. How does this make you feel, and how can everyone, including current and former astronauts, spread this kind of inspiration?
Well, thanks for asking about it. I mean, I don't know if I kind of like art. And I'm really, I mean, it makes me feel so good that by bringing together the stuff we love, right? I love art, I love space, I like science, I like, and to be able to pull it all together in what I think is a meaningful way has been really special for me. I think the biggest thing from it, though, is what I see it doing for other people, the kids in the hospitals, just anyone who encounters one of these suits, this idea of space and art kind of coming together. I love people thinking about that. I love it from the standpoint of when I look at my son as he was going through school, I'm like, dude, I want you using your whole brain, right? Don't get channeled one way. I mean, there's things you love, but let all of your talents come up. Use all of them. Be okay with sharing all of them. I mean, Chris shared one, a little musical instrument that he played on his space flight. I mean, those kinds of things, I think we as astronauts, if you will, who tend to get kind of labeled as these technical people who couldn't possibly be outside of these technical things that they do, we need to be proactively sharing these other loves that we have and how that all fits into who we are. And I've made it kind of a mission in my life to share as much of that about anyone I learn about as possible. And so have very happily discovered that I would say at least I can probably not be overestimating. If I say at least 90% of my colleagues in the astronaut office have some creative thing they do, whether you're aware of it or not. That might be cake making or quilting or poetry or whatever it is. Basket weaving. I'm going to throw out my friend Dan Bursch, who I just discovered is a basket weaver, and one of the most meticulously beautiful basket. I mean, these works of art that he creates are incredible. And when I discovered this, I said, Dan, did you basket weave on station. I think it was Expedition 3 he was part of. And I was like, did you, take this with you to space? He's like, yeah, but I never really told anyone. And I'm like, why? He's like, can you imagine if it got out that astronauts are in space basket weaving? What are we paying? Like that kind of thing. I'm like, I think people would love it, to know that this is going on in somebody's free time when they're not just here on Earth, but when they're in space, how we're taking our humanity with us. And I think we need to keep thinking about how we bring the human and human spaceflight with us, no matter where we go. And yeah, I just love it. I love the art thing. I love knowing that every single one of the people on this panel have something creative, artistic going on in their lives. And that hopefully you're not afraid to share it. And I don't know if you have the video of Chris playing his ukulele on the space station, but you feel free to bring that up sometime. It's really awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Nicole. I actually had no idea that someone was basket weaving in space, but I think that is so cool. And just to see this other side of rocket scientists, I feel like ever since, especially growing up, we hear that the hardest thing to study is rocket science. And to hear that these rocket scientists and engineers also have this artistic and creative side that a lot of others can relate with is very comforting to hear. And, another point I wanted to add to some of your comments as well as what George was saying earlier about how space is for everyone. Yeah. Growing up, you would think, I thought becoming an aerospace engineer was the only space career choice available to students. I didn't realize you could be a space artist, a food scientist who works at NASA, a space physician, a space policy analyst. There are so many interdisciplinary careers, and I love to think of space as its own little world. So every career, every skill set you're going to need here on Earth, we're going to need in space in the future. And so I'm very excited within the next 10, 20 years to see how this industry will continue to grow and the new career opportunities that'll continue to expand that we don't even have existing today right now. And so, leading a little bit away from that, I had a question again for Chris and George related to commercial astronaut training. A lot of young students grow up wanting to be explorers, wanting to be astronauts. And so I'm curious to learn about your experiences preparing and training to become commercial astronauts. What was that process like for the both of you? And what are some activities or skills that aspiring astronauts can do to prepare for space travel? And Nicole and Ron, feel free to chime in. I think Ron kind of already mentioned some of the things that he's doing, but feel free to chime in if you have anything else to add.
Well, if you can't catch the theme going on here today, it's really just, we're going to need all kinds of people. We're going to need everyone with all their skills. And like Nicole mentioned, as we take more humans into space, we're going to take more of our humanity into space as well. So it's those folks, like we talk about STEAM careers and STEAM pathways constantly because it is vital. It's important. And gosh, all the people I interacted with during the lead up and the training for Inspiration 4, they were all passionate about the engineering and the safety and the medical training that we were experiencing. But as Ron was talking about, how do you get ready for a future flight? What do you do? What do you think about when it comes to what are you going to do once you get to space? Nicole, thanks for saying that you thought the pictures were great. That was one of my favorite things to do, was to take pictures of Earth. But as I was leading up to it, we talked to photographers, we talked to artists. I took ukulele lessons, and I don't know how much they helped, but I reached out because music is a big part of not just who I am. It's something that's important to my family and my extended family, and it's something lots of people can relate to. And so, getting it training to go to space, it looks a lot different than what it did, 50 years ago. But still, whether you're training to go for a suborbital flight or you're training to go for a stay at the station or beyond, there are a lot of similarities when it comes to understanding just what the different environment is like, and then being willing to accept new experiences and have some trust in your fellow crew members and fellow trainers that they're going to keep you safe, so that when you are put in these unique and unfamiliar scenarios, that you're going to have the skills, because we've been there now. We've have some experience. Now we are still learning how to go farther out, and that's what Orion's going to do. That's what we're looking at as going to Mars over the next 10 plus years. it's going to be an incredible time to understand what we need to do to explore and expand out. But the biggest thing that we can do now, and that you can do, Gitika, and you too, Felix, is that whatever it is that you find exciting is to really stick with it, have that grit and determination to see it through. It's going to get challenging. There are going to be times where it's going to be hard. And just like playing the ukulele in front of my crewmates was the hardest thing I had to ever do in space. Forget entry, forget launch. The scariest thing by far is performing in front of your friends, in my opinion. And so whatever it is, just have that determination and stick with it, because that is when you're going to get the results that you're trying to aim for. And if you don't get there, you've got all these other people around you that you can always ask for help. And that's the other thing I would say is, like, do not be afraid to ask for help, because we are not doing this on our own at all, right?
So just picking up on the musical theme, when I was at the Johnson Space Center in Houston for my job, I also on the side played lead trombone in a 20-piece big band made up of other engineers and astronauts there. So yes, there seems to be a common theme of artistic and technical among many of the people in our profession. So just to continue the thought here, there's lots of ways for people to be a part of and to support our space activities in the future. So my observation would be, if you can find something that you love doing that is related in some way to either current or planned activities in the future, stick with that, get good at it, try to make a difference, and support the effort. And that's going to really pay off for the team as well as hopefully for you in addition. One other interesting evolution that I'm seeing take place right now is training is really changing. And Nicole had to train for years to have a successful space flight on the shuttle and station. And Chris, certainly for months at a time to make sure that everything was going well. Now what we're seeing is that spacecraft are fully automated. Basically, when I flew on New Shepard, there was no pilot on board. There was no pilot on the ground. The computer was running the show. And some people might find that disturbing, but of course, on the bright side, there's less chance for pilot error when you don't have a pilot. But anyway, that really allows companies to streamline the training process. We only actually had 3 days of training that was not focused on flying the spacecraft. The computer did that. All we had to understand was how to get in and out of your seat, both in 1G and in weightlessness, how to interpret the displays and talk on the radio, and then how to respond for emergencies. And we went through time after time of simulations in the trainer on the ground. And by the time it got to launch day, we all felt very well prepared and very confident that we could be safe and successful on our mission. But that is a completely different paradigm than we've had in past years, where you had to devote years of your life to prepare for that relatively short stay in space.
Amazing answers from both of you there. An interesting point about kind of moving away or moving to kind of computers flying. You can interpret that in kind of any way in any way you want, kind of if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Going on to our next question for Chris and Nicole. Interacting with your crew throughout a space mission is a big part of going to space as a team and achieving all mission goals, like on Chris's Inspiration 4 mission and Nicole's Space Shuttle and ISS missions. How can we convey that kind of teamwork back down here on Earth?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, because going to space does involve that teamwork, right? And intentionally at the very beginning, we set out to form a good, strong team. We had come from such different backgrounds and some from very different parts of the country that we really were just four strangers who did not have a common background that a lot of times people have to get vetted through the selection process. And we were still trying to figure each other out. But it was kind of going back to that overview effect that Ron talked about, is that you have to be open to it and flexible. And so how do you bring that down to Earth? I think it's just being willing to be open to other ideas and to listen. If you have good listening ears and are willing to understand where people are coming from, you'll understand and be better able to anticipate what their goals are and what they might do next. So I think not just acting, but Nicole, would you say like a big part of it is listening to each other and understanding each other's motivations and where they're from?
I'm sorry, Chris, what did you say? No, I'm sorry. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's crazy because I think what that speaks to as well is this willingness to acknowledge that it's not all about our strengths, right? We have to learn like what our weaknesses are as well, except that each of us have weaknesses too, and that our teammates, our crewmates might actually have strengths in those areas, and how you mix all of that together to, have mission success and stuff. But man, listening is and it's everything from, responding to an emergency to just understanding just kind of the dynamic that's going on across the people that you're with at any given time, right? Understanding, okay, are we happy about the way we're moving forward with this? And that takes the ability to listen, which, sometimes gets confused with not being a good leader. I think the best leaders I have ever had are the ones that really and truly can listen, understand the vibe, and pull it all together from the entire crew. And man, to me, so ditto to everything you just said, Chris. And then the bringing it back to earth thing, I think the crew side of that, being a good crew, understanding what being a good crewmate is, not being a passenger, but being a crewmate is one of the single greatest lessons I got from flying in space and working for NASA. We go to space and we build a machine, right, to support our life there. And we know as crewmates that every morning we have to get up and do things like check, oh, how much CO2 is in my atmosphere? How much clean drinking water do I have? The integrity of your thin metal hull, the health and well-being of all your crewmates. And that absolutely is such a wonderful example for how we should be living like crewmates, not passengers down here, on Spaceship Earth. Not a new term, that's been around for a long time. The idea of behaving like crewmates, maybe having an operating manual, not a new idea, but I think it's in all of the complexity that we do, to get to space, to live there, to come home safely, not even mention in the science or international relationships. It really comes down to how are we going to behave together as crewmates to be successful. And that's what if I say anything now when I'm presenting to students, kids, even adults, I'm like, dudes, figure out your way to be part of the crew and to understand that that's one of the most significant roles you will ever have here on Earth, is to understand your role as a crewmate. And my friend Ron Guerin and I like to say that, if we can learn how to behave like crewmates, not passengers, we have the power to create a future for all life on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space. And that's a pretty, incredible thing to be a part of. And Ron, I cannot wait to see you. Because I think the way you're preparing right now, the way you live your life is as a crewmate, right? That's the discovery, is that I need to be part of this in a much bigger way. I need to understand that it's not necessarily about the 10 minutes of floating weightless in front of the window. It's about what leads up to that and what I do when I bring that experience back to Earth. And so it's exciting to think about more and more people having that opportunity.
Yeah, I just want to add. Go ahead, Ron. You go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. It's thanks. I'm thrilled to fly, but I think just for me equally, I'm thrilled for hundreds, dozens, hundreds, thousands of people to be flying in the upcoming years. And that, I think, is the huge change for commercial space and these suborbital flights, is that instead of a few people flying, they'll have, many, many people flying. And for all those people to come back with, a change in themselves and a change in their view of the world and how they relate to people, I think it's just going to lead to so many positive things for the planet.
Yeah, Chris, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just to add on to that, like when you bring that back, it I know we talk in terms of crew a lot. We talk, and so that might start to get abstract for a lot of folks, thinking that, well, do I really just need to train or think about teamwork when it comes to being a part of a crew that's going to space? And like, oh my goodness, no way. That's as you're building the vehicles, as you're building the next space stations, as you're building the next creative project or the next medical breakthrough. It's you might be highly skilled in your area that you've studied, but you're not going to do anything without being a part of a team and do it as well as you could have done it without them. So keep that in mind. I jokingly say that, yeah, we might be building or engineering something that's made with electricity and design drawings and it's based in physics, but you are working with humans that are very full of cultural differences and have their own emotions and feelings that can really impact your design and impact the outcomes. And so being a really good team member is going to affect everything that you're doing that way as well.
Those are all amazing thoughts from all three of you. I mean, just the phrase, like what Nicole saying, be like a crew member, not a passenger. It's something very new that I've heard, but it really hit home, on Earth and off Earth. It's so important to make sure you have that role, you play that role, and you make a conscious effort to make sure that you're part of this team instead of either taking charge or not doing anything. So finding that correct balance. And I think that's, such a powerful statement. And, my next question is for Ron and George. Commercialization, I think, excites all of us. And so with this rapidly growing commercialization in space, so many new doors are opening up, with companies like Blue Origin and Axiom that are building commercial space stations that'll hopefully go up after the ISS. The barrier of entry for going to space and conducting space research will decrease. And now a lot more individuals, from scientists who are doing laboratory research right now, can go to space and do their research in the future. And so I'm curious to hear both of your thoughts on how do you envision the space exploration and the space industry really changing in the next 20, 30 years? And what are some technological or just gaps that we as an industry need to fix and solve in order to continue expanding this growing industry?
So
go ahead, George.
It's going to be very exciting to see all the things happening in space in the decades ahead. I've heard some people say every company is a space company. Some just don't know it yet because there's such great potential, whether you're doing something in space for Earth or for the people in space or for exploration, just so many different kinds of things going on. After the International Space Station is retired, probably around 2030 or so, we're going to see multiple different commercial space stations. And they won't all be the same, and they'll have different purposes and different missions. Some for scientific research, some for space manufacturing, some for Earth observation. We'll see orbital propellant depots and space hotels and all different kinds of activities. I think we'll see a lot more suborbital space tourism so that more and more people can have that opportunity, and hopefully it will continue to become safer and less expensive so that more people can experience that. There's something just right around the corner that I'm very interested and excited about, and that's called point-to-point transportation through space.
Absolutely.
And so I think, although a lot of people think, oh, that's way off, I'm seeing industry develop systems that are going to have the potential to fly from one place on Earth to the opposite side of the planet in just an hour or two. Think about how that would change our life in terms of not only transportation, but how we communicate and how we do business. And whether you're talking about a business meeting or visiting friends or relatives, or just going out and sightseeing and understanding different cultures, different cities, different countries, different societies. All those things I think are going to really help us to be able to shrink the planet, if you will, and hopefully get along a little better. And so those are all very exciting things. The technology is just about there. It turns out that some of our biggest challenges may be things like laws and policies and regulations. How are we going to do that? And so there are some challenges in the non-technical world in terms of how we can use some of this new technology. But I'm pretty excited. I think we're going to definitely see that in the next 10 years. And it's going to open up a lot of different opportunities for people to be involved in that. Right now, there's like 14 different FAA licensed spaceports in the United States, and of course more than that around the world. but there's 20,000 airports. And if we start thinking about, hey, we can have spaceports to go from different locations as well as to low Earth orbit and the moon and onto Mars. Wow, what an exciting time.
That's perfectly said, George. It is a really dynamic time, and looking ahead 5-10 years, it's a whole new, I think, era of being able to fly into space. And one of the things I love to tell students when I'm talking to them is like what George mentioned before, is that you can be involved in the space industry in so many different ways. Yes, engineers and pilots, but there are regular office jobs, people doing legal work, managing inventory. There are trade jobs where people do like a 2-year trade career after high school, and they'll be building spaceships with carbon fiber in their hands. There's jobs in hospitality that you wouldn't think. One of the most dependent upon people at spaceports is Joe the barista, and he makes coffee and drinks for people that are building spaceships, operating spaceships, people that are going to be flying to space. And most anyone you talk to there said, yeah, Joe's like a key element of our organization here. So I think that that's a great message to give to students, is that there's so many ways things are opening up. It's a really exciting time. It's fun to be a part of it.
Amazing answers from you both as well, and bringing up about like point-to-point transportation. That's going to be a game changer in the future. This next question is for Ron. In your upcoming space flight, what are you most looking forward to, and what has been your favorite thing/activity that you've done to prepare?
Oh, thanks, Felix. Thinking about what I'm most looking forward to, of course, that moment of rocket engine cutoff and the weightlessness, being in that space and time, and see how it, see what comes to me there. Having the parachutes open and landing softly, I think will be a really satisfying moment. And then afterwards, I feel like it's a transition into a new life. I mean, I could go and talk about this experience. I love working with students. I've been doing classroom activities since 1995. And, trying to, sharing these messages that, yes, you can be involved in space. Yes, Earth exists as a planet. It's interconnected. It's an extremely thin atmosphere that keeps everything alive within it. And, sharing these messages with students, I think is really important. So if there are any teachers or educators out there that would like to have what we call one of these space chats, if you just search for Galactic Unite Space Chat, you could find a link to a forum, and we'd love to connect with classrooms all over the world and have Q&A sessions with students and talk about space.
Yeah, this past year I had the incredible opportunity of working with Ron and like Dr. Wagner and Anhita for arranging the Space Education Symposium virtually. And I could really see Ron's passion for educating not only the youth, but also getting teachers involved in making them confident to educate students about space. When it comes to aerospace engineering or rocket science, a lot of teachers feel they don't want to talk about it, even though they're excited, because they feel they don't have the technical skills to talk about it. And I feel like what Ron is doing with the Space Education Symposium and his other activities and events are really, changing so many students' lives as well as teachers. So thank you, Ron. And again, very excited to see you go to space.
Thanks so much.
And so, yeah, of course. And, my last question for everyone on the panel, now that I could see this throughout this past hour of talking with all of you, your passion for space, the future of space exploration is so evident, and it was such a fun panel. So this last question is for everyone, and it's, if you could travel back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, whether it be regarding a pursuit of a passion in the aerospace industry, really pursuing a career in anything, if you could just give one piece of advice, what would it be? And maybe Nicole, George, Chris, Ron, any one of us could, any one of you can start us off with giving this advice.
I'm happy to start. I think it would be to don't second guess yourself. Right. I think that when people ask me what was the biggest hurdle along the way, it was that, I doubted the heck out of myself. For the longest time, I thought, and you could feel, it's not just astronaut, but I thought astronaut, oh, that's something other special people get to do. Why would they ever pick me? How could that opportunity ever open up for me? And I was very close to just living that line with everything, and so very thankful to people that I considered to be mentors that I could trust to just reach out to and say, hey, this astronaut thing, what do you think? And this was after years already of working as an engineer at Kennedy Space Center, learning what astronauts do, knowing that 99.9% of their job sadly is not flying in space, and that most of it was a lot like what I was already doing as a NASA engineer, but still it didn't give me on my own the warm fuzzy to pursue it, right? So it took reaching out to people that I consider to be mentors, which I highly encourage people to do. These are people that will know more about you than you know about yourself. And they are the ones that will lift you up. And so thankful to them. In particular, I have a friend named Jay Honeycutt, who is a hero of human spaceflight. And he shared things with me and with my young colleagues, and I still have it. I've got it right here on my little astronaut guy. Things like, here's how we can, not why we can't, approaching things that way, believing there's a solution to every challenging problem. And I think that fits right in with not doubting yourself, with putting yourself out there and at a minimum, doing the stuff that you have control of, right? And becoming a NASA astronaut, the only thing you have control of, well, I would say there might be two. You need to look at what the criteria are and make sure you satisfy them. But the other one is picking up the pen and filling out the application. Because if you don't do that, it's not happening. And it was like Jay gave me permission to do that one thing I had control of that I would not have done on my own. And I encourage people to don't doubt yourself out of some of the most amazing opportunities that exist out there.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Nicole. I mean, shoot, let's just end the call right there. No, but I mean, there are a lot of chances that you have to go and take care of things and do opportunities and, unashamedly go after them and say, sure, I will try that. And I think being okay with messing up, being okay with making mistakes is a necessity. If you're not good at losing, you're not going to be great at winning either. So that's a huge thing. And that's something that we as parents are still trying to teach our kids. And it's like, it's okay that your sister won this time. It's okay that you might win next time, but that's not what is fun. It's fun just being there and experiencing it. So, and then just being open to those opportunities that come along and feel free to say yes. I mean, I'm hoping my kids are having fun this weekend. We took a trip and we're in McMinnville, Oregon. So if you see airplanes behind me, we're at the Evergreen Aerospace Museum this week, which also has an amazing water park with a 747 on top that has water slides in it. It's amazing. Okay. But anyway, just be open to the opportunities and be willing to try on new things. And it's like I said a little bit earlier, it's okay to make mistakes and it is okay to fail because that is where you are going to get your greatest lessons. So, I mean it wholeheartely. I've screwed up a lot of things, but I've had some successes at some points that have made all the difference. So, between what Nicole said and whatever George and Ron said in just a moment too, I'm sure that's absolutely going to be something we all need to take note of.
So we said this a couple times, but there's so many opportunities right now in space-related activities. If you have a passion for space, there is a place for you. So find something that you enjoy or that you're good at and try to continue to support that effort and make a difference. And if you're patiently plodding along in that direction, you might surprise yourself in terms of what you're able to experience or to achieve during your life. And let me tell you, I hope that all of you who have an interest in going space get a chance to do that someday because it is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one of our favorite messages for students is to find something you really love doing. Be ready to work hard at being really good at it, and you'll never know. Talking to people from Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin, I don't think anyone that's working for the companies or that's going to fly into space would have thought 15 years ago that that's what we'd be doing now. And those opportunities are just going to come more and more often. And the other thought I'd give for students is to reach out to people that are interested in space and in the kinds of things you're interested in, whether it's model rockets or, designing clothes or something like that. There's such great opportunities now online to connect to people with common interests. Like for students interested in space, there's SEDS, the Students for Exploration and Development of Space, SDES. And Gitika, thank you for making me aware of the SGAC, the Space Generation Advisory Council. Connect with all those people of common interest and start building that network. It can make a great difference.
Yeah, amazing answers from all of you there, kind of talking about not giving up and just doing it and kind of reaching out to other people as well. Now that's all the questions we've kind of prepared for you today. We have got one last question that's been popped in our YouTube chat, so I'll read that out now. So this is for anyone who wants to answer. How many launches have each of you watched in person, and what's your favourite rockets?
Well, obviously, I have a favorite booster. It's Booster 1062, but I watched several launches. I was fortunate enough to see the shuttle launches, going to college in Daytona Beach. But even still, it's my next favorite launch is going to be the one that is next. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
I did get to see one space shuttle launch, and Nicole, it was yours. It was STS-133. Way back when.
Way back when. Stop it.
And then, I was lucky enough to see a SpaceX launch. But what's been exciting too with Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin is seeing their launches. I've seen 3 of Galactic's flights, and I was lucky enough to get to go to Blue Origin's 5th human flight launch back last June. So seeing the vehicles in person and seeing people come off the spaceship that same day, it's a wonderful thing, and it's great to have more and more people being able to do that.
I did see one of the Apollo moon launches, probably a dozen or so space shuttle launches, which were very, very impressive. Handful of Falcon 9 Dragons, but my favorite's got to be the one that I saw from the inside is New Shepard, and they're all great.
I love that. The one you see from the inside. I've known people who have experienced a launch from the inside before they ever saw one from the outside. It boggles my mind that could happen. But
wow,
that was early shuttle days when it was kind of a quick turn from getting selected to be an astronaut to flying. But man, George, like you, I had the opportunity, as a kid in Florida to see, a Saturn V launch, which I don't think I'm looking forward to that kind of thing happening again. These big rockets that can, get us to the moon that way and beyond. Watched, I don't know how many space shuttle launches, and in my mind had convinced myself that I knew what it was going to feel like. And yet nothing, I don't think anything prepares you for any rocket you launch on. I don't think it prepares you. And I read something, George, you had done once, an interview you had done once where you talked about the feeling at launch, and how a lot of astronauts talk about getting kicked off the launch pad. Well, I'll tell you what, that's what those solid rocket boosters do to you, right? When you've got inline liquid fuel, I think it's a much smoother lift off the pad. Still, just like the adrenaline and the acceleration is amazing. But man, that shuttle launch, but just to watch. I'm very fortunate now I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida, so right across the state from KSC. And to just be able to walk out our front door to the place my son found was the perfect viewing point to look through the houses and know that anything lifting off from KSC, we're going to be able to see it from here. If it's, it every single time. I don't care if it's cargo or crew. There's just this feeling about it. And just like wanting more and more people to have access to flying on those vehicles, I think there's something pretty impressive just about witnessing the launch of one. And the more people we could get to physically be in that place to see that happening, I think the better it will be as well. Because I am looking forward to that Star Trek future. I'm looking forward to those millions of people that Jeff wants on the O'Neillian habitats. I'm looking forward to the industry being lifted off of this planet into the benign environment in space and figuring out how to sustainably generate all the power we need from the sun and beam it back to Earth versus doing what we have to do down here to make that happen. I just think all of this that we're doing off the Earth that's about improving life for the Earth makes me so happy to have these conversations, because I think it gets that word out in a way that just really needs to happen. And I'm thankful to all of you for the part you're playing in it too.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah, that was great to hear your, responses to seeing what your favorite rocket was. I hope one day I get to see a real rocket launch in person. I know for me, what got me into space was building model rockets in my tech ed classroom in middle school. So I think seeing anything blast off is very exciting. So it's great to hear that. And so I want to thank you so much for taking your time to do this inspiring panel. I learned so much from all of you, and it's, such an incredible time listening to your thoughts about how it was to go to space. Felix?
Yeah, again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming on today. It was amazing being able to talk to you all, had amazing answers to both of our questions, all of our questions, and, this is what the panel's about, inspiring people, inspiring the next generation. That's why we do these panels, and you've really helped kind of push that today, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate so much you including me here. And I know Felix and Gitica, you'll be flying into space someday.
Thank you.
We'll see you up there.
Likewise. Yeah, thanks, you guys. It's been a great talking to you, and thanks to all the panel members. It's been fun chatting with you guys alongside answering Felix's and Gitica's questions.
Great discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. I hope we can do this in person. Maybe, Ron, you can invite us to your launch. We can all come out and celebrate together.
There we go.
Please. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Recording stopped.
Cool. Well, thanks, Felix. Thanks, everybody.